Okay guys, so we're gonna probably get some work in before lunch. Just a little bit of bringing some dogs out. We got dogs here in various stages of training, various levels of experience, and various levels of genetic quality. And we're gonna bring them out, we're gonna look at them, and we're gonna slot them into this and figure out where they are in relation to this, what needs to be worked on, and then how. How do you fix pursuit? How do you fix grip? How do you fix possession? Or how do you make it better, I should say. Okay? So that'll be a big thing. Now, somebody asked me over lunch, what are we doing? A lot of suit work? Are we doing a lot of sleeve work? Now, I do a fair bit of both, but I prefer sleeve work because I think the vast majority of the foundation, especially when it comes to foundation, can all be done there. And I like the sleeve because of a couple of things. Okay, number one, obviously ease of use, which is big, especially if you're working a lot of dogs. You want to wear a big bulky suit every time. And, you know, you're working dogs in various stages of training. Some of them aren't even on the suit, so it's a pain in the butt taking the whole thing on and off, right? And then number two, obviously, you know, fatigue and so on and so forth. And then also I like the flexibility that sleeves give you in terms of your ability to catch and promote specific gripping behavior and work on specific issues. Just easier to use an extremity than it is to use your whole body in specific things. All right? So I am a firm believer that the vast majority of the foundation work should be done with, I mean, I shouldn't say should, but you can do it with a sleeve. You can make a very good biting dog with the sleeve, and it transitions relatively seamlessly to the suit. And in fact, I like to do that because my dogs don't see suit from puppyhood, and the first couple suit bites are basically like civil scenarios. I don't generally do my first suit bites on like a table or something. I was like, okay, I got to make sure he's okay with this. I actually do my first suit bites as civil scenarios, usually. Not all the time, but usually. Okay, where I'll put the dog in a situation that triggers, you know, we'll go through the defense and up into the arousal, prey, so on and so forth. And now I'm creating a scenario where the dog should engage if I've done all my prep work properly, and I get to let him engage on something he's never engaged on before, a suit, and it's basically like a civil scenario. So you get a real good idea how your dog would actually go in real life. Okay? So, of course, you can only do that once or twice, and then it's done. And now it's just another piece of equipment that you can use, of course, to build a dog, but it's not exactly a civil scenario anymore. He knows when you're wearing a bite suit, okay? So there's a number of different types of sleeves that I like to use. So these are, I think they're hard, what are they called? Yeah, they're called hard dog, all right? Big barrel sleeves that have compression. You can buy various levels of compression. I like this a lot for building grips, counters, pushing grips, whatever, because for me, the dog has to open his mouth all the way in order to bite properly. And when he pushes and compresses the sleeve, he receives a reward of the compression in the sleeve, depending on how much compression you've got. If you've got like the highest level, he's gonna have to bite really hard to make compression. If you've got a lower level one, it doesn't take much, and he feels that compression, and the compression actually usually stimulates the counter. So like dogs that have a lot of trouble countering, if you're using like a traditional IGP sleeve, that's generally a problem, right? Because the sleeve doesn't do too much, right? It's a pretty hard sleeve. Some dogs will counter, but some dogs struggle a bit. But when there's that compression, they're like, ooh, compression, go, and now they're countering into the sleeve a lot because they're getting that compression out of it. And of course, as the decoy, if you're reacting properly, you're building that. Okay, so I like using these, not for the first time, but once I've got the dog past the basics. This is what I use for dogs like protection dogs, police type dogs and stuff like this. This is what I'll use. IGP dogs, not really, but any other thing, I like to use this, especially because of the thickness of the biting surface. They have to open their mouth all the way. And that brings us to where we're going to talk a lot about now how to use specific pieces of equipment to enhance performance. Because the equipment matters, like what you use matters, but it doesn't make or break you. What makes or break you is the emotion of the dog. Like if you make a dog, if you build him up and he believes in himself and he's like hot to trot, he's ready to go, he's at maximum performance, that is a dog that it doesn't matter what you put in his mouth, he's going to bite it, he's going to commit to it, right? Versus, okay, you didn't put your foundation in properly, instead you're going to rely on a piece of equipment to do it all for you. It's not going to work. The most important thing is the emotion. That's why you can take a dog who's never bitten a suit in his life. You put him on a flat collar and a lead, and if you built him properly, you put him on that suit, he's pushing. He's full grips and he's pushing. He's committed. He's all in, because that's what's been built into him. All right? So I think apparatus and equipment is important, but people do too much. Too much, like the bungees and this and that. It's like crazy stuff. It's like, who cares? It's too much. And most of the time, you remove all of it, right? He's got the dog on the bungee and he's doing all these, you know, pushing grips and this and that. You take the bungee away and you say, okay, I'm not gonna be your friendly decoy anymore. Bite me. Dog bites you, and now I'm not reacting. You know, I'm not going, jumping away and all this stuff. All of a sudden, he's pulling and he's shaking, and all that stuff that they did with the bungees is gone, because the emotion of the dog is what it is, and then maybe the genetics to some degree are what they are. You can manufacture an appearance with apparatus, right? You gotta be careful with that stuff. Apparatus can help you, but it can also kind of blind you to the truth. So be aware of that. If your dog is hyper reliant on apparatus in order to perform, then that's something that maybe you want to look at. So for me, I don't waste too much time on apparatus, because unless it's like a sport dog or something and you really have a lot of time to optimize the performance, it's like a protection dog, you know, maybe he's not pushing quite like technically the way I want him to push. Who cares? He's committed. I'm just going to focus on his commitment. I don't really care about the technicalities of how he's pushing. If his mind isn't right. Same with the police dogs. His mind isn't right. He doesn't really want to engage. Who cares how he's biting? He doesn't even want to be there in the first place. Let's get him there in the first place. Let's make him really want it. And then we'll focus on the technicalities of what he's doing. As I see a lot of the decoy seminars and stuff, they're focused too much on technicalities and all these devices, and it makes for a good seminar. Because you see it, and it's like, oh yeah, look, the bungee works. Yeah, get rid of the bungee, see what happens. Get rid of the bungee after 6 months, see what happens. Most of those dogs, you got nothing. There's not going to be much there. And you'll be like, well, I could have made the same thing with a flat collar and a long line. It doesn't really matter, right? So apparatus is good, but it's also over-relied upon. Yeah. Okay? So generally, with dogs, when I start them, there's one of two ways that I start a dog. Okay? First I look at the dog and I say, what is he? Is he a prey dog? Is he a defensive dog? What is he? All right? And a lot of dogs are both. Right? So when I start a dog, I'm doing a general drive evaluation. I might quickly like say, okay, bring the dog in. That's usually what I do, is I say, bring him in. And I see his behavior. If he comes in and he's normal and then he sees people and he's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Oh, defensive dog. I don't care if there's prey. I won't even test it, really, because it doesn't matter at that point. I see what his automatic reflex is a defensive reaction. So I'm going to use that to build him, because that's where he needs to be built from, regardless of what prey is or is not there. If we don't address the defense, it's like, yeah, I can make friends with him and I'll kick a rag around and we'll be buddies after a while and he'll want to bite the rag. That's not the point. The point is his initial reaction to unfamiliar people or an unfamiliar situation is, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, let's address that. Let's work through that. Let's use that to generate, remember that power bar? That comes from down there. Okay? For that dog. Now maybe I see the dog and he's super social. He's not worried about anything. You can go boom and he's just like smiling, wagging his tail, all that stuff. Okay, well there's not much defense there. So what's the solution? Do I push him into defense by like having him take their 6-month-old out of the field and I beat him? No, right? That's not a solution. The solution is I'm going to use the prey stimulation. But there's a way and there's a way. When you use the prey stimulation, for me, generally with young dogs, there it is. With young dogs, I use the leather bite wedge. And I like to use it for a variety of reasons, okay? Now, if I have a prey dog what's the first thing he should see? Should he see this? Right? Going across the ground, stimulating his prey? Should I be throwing this around and waving it around? No. I don't want to start like that, because now that's what it's all about. I don't want that to be what it's all about in the beginning. In the beginning, I take him out on the field, and I say, be over there with your dog. And I come out, and I just come out, and this is hidden, and I come out and I just show him this picture, you know, like just a guy. You don't see any equipment, right? And I come out, and because I've already assessed that he's a prey dog and he's very social, he probably just wag his tail and be like, oh, hey, you want to play with me? And I'll come out, right, and I'll work around him a little bit and just show him myself. I won't be super close, I won't put a ton of pressure, but I'll show him the man, okay? And then from there, you know, even if he shows a little arousal, like he just bumps into the line, even something, even if he wants to play, who cares, right? He's barking at me. Then, oh, all of a sudden this comes out, and this starts flying all over the place, and we get that. But it starts with this, the man. Because that's ultimately what you want. Is you want, unless you're doing like a sport and you don't care about if he's man-oriented or not. But even for a sport like IGP, I want him to bark at the helper, I don't want him to bark at the sleeve. So if you start and you make it all about this, the danger is with the prey dog, they become hyper-equipment fixated to the point where they will actually avoid the man for the equipment. It's not good. So it's no problem that he has the prey, but he learns to stimulate the prey by activating me. Okay? The prey doesn't activate him. He activates the prey. And in the beginning, of course, he's going to be confused. He'll be like, what's this guy doing? Kind of walking around a little bit funny and stuff. What's he doing, right? Sometimes maybe you misdiagnose the dog and he even goes, whoa, great, yeah, there it is, right? There's the prey. For the defensive dog, it's a different story. Why is a defensive dog barking at you? Anybody?
Anxiety?
Yes.
Go away.
Exactly. He wants you to leave. So if I go, hey, and let's play, he'll be like, what the, get the hell out of here. I want you to go. That's scary. You're scaring me. Right? If he's purely defensive. And that's what I do. What I need to do is I need to flip it. So in the beginning, I'm just going to shore up his defense. I'll be like, here I am. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm gone. We'll do that until I see a forward, proactive dog. He's pulling on the leash. He's having a good time. Whoa, whoa, whoa. He's pulling. He's active. Great. That's a dog now that I can start to turn all that arousal. Because remember, arousal is useful. When he's going, whoa, 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 it's arousal, but it's not very useful arousal. When he's, ho, 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 and he's forward, and he's pulling, and he's active, that's a dog now, even though I generated that from defensive pressure, that's a dog now I can start to show him the prey. And I can be like, okay, I'm prey. And maybe he will say, well, I don't care about the wedge. A lot of defensive dogs, even when you make a lot of arousal, you throw the wedge, they can give a shit. They're still barking at you, right? But what I do is I make the prey part of me, and I move suddenly sideways from the defensive pressure. Whoa, 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 sideways. Whoa, 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 sideways. And now he's learning that making me active makes me into prey, and then he'll eventually experiment with nipping me and then biting me, and then progressing to the point now where we can use equipment, and he will actually pursue the equipment. So a big part of what you do is your job is to bring the dog into balance, okay? So if you see a lot of prey, it's all prey, there's nothing else, great, but I still need to make sure he becomes man-oriented. So right from the beginning, I'm addressing that, I'm making sure that he's about the man. If he's all defense, okay, great, fine. I'm going to generate the power from the defense, but then I'm going to bring it again into the prey, because the prey is where the biting happens. So my goal is for that defensive dog to be able to transition from barking at me to going after equipment, right? And so for me with the prey, it's kind of funny. With the prey dog, I want him to bite this because I'm going to use this for stuff, but I don't want him to focus too much on this, especially from the get-go. Of course, once it's out there, and he's going to be locked on it. But in the beginning, I want it to be about me. And then ultimately with the prey dog, I'm going to probably not spend too long with equipment away from me. I'm going to transition quickly the equipment to being on top of me, on me, and getting him thinking about biting me instead of equipment, okay? Versus with the defensive dog, I say, hey man, I know you're all about me. Chill on the whole me thing. Let's get him into the prey stuff, because this is where he's going to learn to relax. This is where the good biting is going to happen. The power is going to come from the defense, right? The power is going to be from the defense, but the actual result, like the grips and all that stuff, is going to be in the prey. So he's going to generate the power from the defense, and then you're going to transition him into the prey object. And when I can get a really defensive dog to start chasing prey objects, sometimes they won't do it and you always have to wear the prey, but sometimes you can do it, and those are the dogs that really turn out very good. Very good, right? So, you know, people ask too, like slipping equipment, leaving the dog with equipment, letting the dog carry equipment, right? I'm more focused especially on that with a defensive dog. I want him to become equipment fixated for a while. I really do, right? Not to an unhealthy level, but to a level where he actually develops confidence in himself, that he's thinking instead of avoidance ultimately. Something has triggered him defensively. Instead of thinking avoidance, he's thinking proactivity. He's thinking, whoa, 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 right? And he comes through that emotion. Instead of going into the avoidance of the emotion, he becomes active in the emotion and he becomes forward. And how much you can do that depends on your skills as a decoy, and also to some degree the dog, being honest. Some dogs, defensive dogs, but they have the ability to come through it and become really good, well-balanced dogs. Some dogs, they're always a little bit of a struggle there. And you have to kind of optimize the dog for what he is and what he can do. Okay, so I start the dogs on the leather. And the reason why I like to use the leather, I'm sure you've watched my video on it. If you haven't, it's okay, there's a big video on it. The reason why I use it is slippery. Okay? And it forces the dog to develop good habits early. Alright? So there are biting surfaces like, let's use this. It's pretty beat up, but we'll use it anyways, okay? So this, like more something a little more traditional, it's like a jute kind of material. It's very soft and very easy. The dog doesn't have to commit 100% to have a pretty good grasp on this. He doesn't have to hold it with all his like level of commitment, right? Like he can kind of half-ass hold it. It'll be pretty hard, even just hold it with his canines. It'll be pretty hard to get it out of his mouth, right? So he can learn, if you have a dog that's prone to maybe not working all that hard, which many of them are, right? Or maybe not committing or has grip issues, he can learn some pretty bad behaviors on this. Versus you use something that, especially the more you use it, the more slippery it gets, that it has compression, so he is being rewarded for biting hard, but if he's not giving it his all and you give it a yank, it's coming right out of his mouth, right? And you can use that now to frustrate him. You don't have, the pressure isn't always from you. It's not always you saying, hey, you screwed up, now I'm going to kick your ass. A lot of the time the pressure comes from negative punishment. You've lost this. You've lost this thing that you want because you did the wrong thing. You chewed and I popped it out of your mouth, or you weren't biting all that hard, or you know, possessing it as the way you should have been, and it came out of your mouth. And now we're going to go back through the cycle where you have to bark for it and work really hard for it because you didn't work very hard. It gives the dogs a good work ethic. If you have a dog that you can see maybe there's a little bit of a grip issue genetically, if you start the dog on this, you can develop really good habits on the grips with this. That's big. Okay? So that's why I like to start a lot of my work on this. And then people say, okay, when do you know the dog is ready? When the dog is able to go through all of this for that. And then he's ready to progress to the next thing. And then on the next thing, I want to see the dog going through all of this for this. Okay? So I'm not talking like the defense. Initially, you're going to obviously do it. But then you're going to be, once the dog is familiar, you're going to be primarily up here working in the prey pyramid. So I want to see that he's able to bark as well as he can bark for it. I want to see that he's able to pursue it, grip it, and possess it. As much as he can do it, as much as I can get him to do it. Before I say, okay, it's pretty good, move to the next thing. If I can constantly get this out of his mouth and he's not committing, I need to spend more time on it. Within reason. Right? Within reason. Some dogs, like I said, you'll find the ceiling. You'll find the place where they tend to kind of plateau, assuming you're somewhat good at what you're doing. Then you say, okay, well, we've plateaued here. Probably time to move to the next piece of equipment. and just be cognizant that maybe we have like a grip issue or possession issue and so on and so forth. There's nothing that's a panacea for bad genetics or genetic, something that's maybe not as good as it could be, okay? So, this is where I start all my young dogs, even my green dogs, and it's where I can decide whether I also want pulling or pushing, okay? The pushing grips, I do a lot of sets, dog punches, and I jump away when he punches. If I've got pulling grips, I can manufacture the pulling. He learns to win the wedge by pulling. All right, so I can introduce him to that concept on this. All right, and I can make sure that he's committing to the grip too. No half-ass, because a few times you'll see he gets tired. He's kind of like loosens up on it. Boom, it's gone, and you piss him off, make him wish he never lost it. You frustrate him, and when you're using frustration, you have to understand one thing. Every dog has an optimal peak of frustration. So you look at frustration kind of like a graph, okay? So if this is my frustration, this is generally how it works, okay? I want to create the next step, the pursuit and the grip here, okay? If I keep doing it, or I keep frustrating him, he's going to give up, right? He's going to be like, oh, whatever, I'm not getting it, just calm down, go to sleep, whatever. Okay? I want to catch him on the uphill climb. I don't want to catch him too early because I'm not going to have enough power. And I definitely don't want to catch him here because now I'm rewarding a lack of effort. So as you work the dog, you are going to notice what his little pattern is. So some dogs, it's really fast. It's like, whoop. And some dogs, it's a nice slow build to the performance. And some dogs, it's a slow build and then boom, the dog just gives up. Right? So you want to make sure that you're catching the dog on the uphill climb and you're not catching the dog on the downhill or too early. You want to be at optimal frustration, and you'll find out, and keep in mind, fatigue makes it worse, right? Dog gets tired, it's really hot out. There's only so much you can do. He's going to burn his energy really fast. You can't keep him in it for too long because then you're actually going to start hurting the performance, right? Some dogs, so I'm struggling with one right now actually. She is really, the problem with frustration is the dog has to want what you've got, okay? That's the problem. If the dog doesn't particularly want the dog doesn't want the bite object, well, is there really a frustration now? Hey, you lost it. I don't care, right? It's like someone waving a turd in your face. It's like, I don't want it. It's okay. It doesn't matter for me, right? So if I'm using frustration as my little game to teach the dog to commit more, then I have to make sure the dog wants it. And then if I know that the dog wants it, I'm going to create that optimal level of frustration and then go through the whole cycle again. So if I pop that thing out of the dog's mouth, I'm looking for that. I'm creating the high frustration and then I'm going back and saying, let's try this again. Or, depending on the scenario, especially with younger dogs, I don't try too many times. I might do one more time maximum, maybe two, maybe just the one, and then I'm putting the dog up. You'll find patterns. So I might find, hey, you know what? He always is a little bit half-assed on the first one, and then after that, he really builds up to it. Then I say, okay, he doesn't get a second one. He gets one, and that's it. And then I'll say, okay, this issue that he's having here, he's just experienced, like he just doesn't know really. He's new. Well, I'm going to do like 3-4 reps and really teach him what it is that he has to do in order to maintain his possession of the bite object. Okay, so you have to judge the dog. And you have to know, okay, I can only do like 2 misses. Anything more than 2 misses, he's done. Right? And for those of you, when I speak about misses, just to be clear, when you've got the bite object and you present it for the bite and the dog tries to bite it and you pull it back and then present it again, and he tries to bite it, this is technically it's pursuit, right? But it's also, when the dog's back tied, it's part of the arousal too, right? So, the harder you make the dog work, keep in mind, you got a limit. Don't go past it, otherwise you might have to just quit on that one. So like if I go past my frustration limit and I see the dog starting to go down, I might be like, oh, I'll do my best to get some frustration out of him and then just, hey, pull him out and then do maybe some different things to generate frustration, right? But usually some dogs know, like look, don't be predictable. Don't always make your frustration as you drag the dog out of the room and never give him a bite. A lot of dogs will be like, well, I don't get the bite anyways, unless he's a high prey Malinois or whatever. They'll be like, I'm not going to get the bite going out of the room. I never do. So, whoa, I'll just leave now, right? Versus, I'll be like, okay, 2 times I've dragged him out of the room with no grip. Guess what he's getting now on the way out of the room? I'm going to give him a grip. So now he learns to keep trying because he knows that there's a possibility of success. If he never is successful, then you're going to have a big problem. So I make a miss. Let's say I do always 2 misses and a grip. Is he going to keep trying hard for those 2 misses? Some dogs will, but most dogs won't. They'll be like, yeah, 2 misses and a grip. Okay, bang, bang. Ah, there it is, boom, right? Versus sometimes there's no miss. Sometimes there's 5 misses. It totally depends on the situation. Don't be predictable. Dogs catch patterns really fast. It's part of their survival mechanisms. They know your patterns. So don't be predictable as the decoy, within reason, of course. You don't want to be surprising the shit out of the dog, but you want to be finding a place where it's enough that it keeps him active, but not so much that, of course, it creates a suppression. Okay? So, what we're going to do is went too long on this stuff, but yesterday we talked about the basics. We got kind of like into the protection pyramid. We talked about understanding, the drive pictures, the importance of developing arousal in the dog, and how the arousal bleeds into all the other behaviors that we look for in the protection work, right? And how it's so important that you have that foundation before you ever seek to advance the dog past that foundation. Okay, so that's all really, really important. But now let's talk about, we kind of got outside, moved around with some dogs, just got you guys kind of feeling it just a little bit. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take a step back. We're going to talk about actual step-by-step development. So you guys have a good, clear understanding, if you're training a dog, what you need to do in order to develop that dog properly. And you have like an actual step-by-step process to follow for developing the dog for protection. Okay? So, there are, like I said, if you've got, let me just do this. If you've got a really fantastic young dog or puppy that's showing you all the desirable genetic traits that you want, there are many roads to Rome. They'll probably get it done as long as you're not a complete fool, right? But if you've got something maybe that's like we talked about, a little bit more, touchy, a little bit more sensitive, maybe not as much drive as you might normally like, it's not that the dog can't be trained, it's that you just have to develop them a little bit more methodically and carefully, and really make sure you're hitting your milestones before you progress. If you've got a puppy that's going 100 miles an hour and it's got all the drive in the world, and you progress past a step, you're like, I'll just start him on the suit. It's like, yeah, he might struggle a bit in the beginning, but he's probably so good that he's gonna just get into it and get better and better and better. Like I work with some Dutch lady was, and she's like, brings me this 5-month-old puppy. She's like, okay, let's put her on the suit. But we didn't do any of the others. Oh no, don't worry. Okay, put her on the suit. It didn't bite very well, but it did. It was there, and it wasn't terrible. And I know, it was a really good puppy. So obviously, in time, it's just going to be so strong and get more confident and more used to it, be able to do it. Right? Does that mean that's what I would do? No, I still don't do that. But that's what they do, and they can still work with good puppies. Right? Here's the thing. The people that are paying you money to train their dogs, or maybe you get a dog in that you're planning to train and sell or whatever, it's not that good. Well, what do? Do you just throw it out and say, yeah, it's no good, sorry, can't do it? Or do we take that dog and actually make something out of it? Because you can do something with a lot of dogs. Okay? So, let's talk about number 1. Okay, we already went into the base of the pyramid. We talked about coming through defense and social aggression if it's there, right? It's usually just defense. And up into prey arousal. Okay? So that's step 1. Whether you've got a young dog that's never been worked before, or you've got a puppy. Now, people always ask for puppies, so rule of thumb for puppies, 0 to 6 months for me is a puppy. Really, they're still puppies when they're older, but that's when I really consider them like puppies, okay? 0 to 6 months, right when the adult teeth come in is when I maybe start changing things up if the dog is ready. I focus completely on generating arousal. It's the most important thing. I want him crazy. I want him pulling on the back tie, pulling on the handler. I want him nuts. I want him forward. I want him barking. I want him active. That's what I want. And active is different than, like a lot of people think that if they have to heavily stimulate and get the barking, it's the same as active. Active is the dog proactively saying, it's time to bark, let's go. On his own. You come out, he comes on the field, he's ready to rock. Remember how we talked about that dog that he gets out there, he knows, and you saw with some of the dogs when we brought them out there, they were ready to go. They came out ready, hot and ready to go, and they wanted to do it, they wanted to be there. Instead of, oh, hey, I'm here, let's do it, let's bark, right? Those are reactive dogs. They're still in that reactive stage of training. They haven't developed yet. So we need to bring them to the point where they're becoming very proactive and very active and high arousal. So, remember, for arousal, depends on the dog. You got a dog that's primarily defensive, even if it has a ton of prey, we address the defense first. And we address the defense first by blind peekaboo. Remember blind peekaboo? He's coming out, he's barking at you, you go back in, you come out, he barks at you, you run back in, okay? Boogeymans, we didn't really do boogeymans. Boogeymans are kind of like blind peekaboo, but they're a little bit different. So I always start with blind peekaboo, right? Where we come in and out of the blinds, just basically, or you can just go behind something if you have something out there. And I just basically stimulate the dog and get him to push me back behind stuff. And that's really all it is, okay? And then, remember how we talked about with some of the dogs, you saw with some of the dogs, they have a lot of prey, so they're not super defensive. So then we bring the bite pillow on a rope with us. We still get the dog to show some activity towards us. Doesn't necessarily have to be a bark, just a look, a lunge, anything. And we reward by marking and throwing the wedge out and whipping it around a few times and then running back into the blind. And generating arousal, getting the dog comfortable barking at you, or at least making activity towards you. Ultimately should be barking. If the dog isn't barking, we need to make it bark. We need to get that constant activity level. The problem with dogs that prey lock, I find that they run out of that a lot faster than they run out of barking. The barking kind of powers the dog up a lot more, and that's what I want. So I will ultimately, even in the beginning, I will reward if the dog just shows activity towards me. Ultimately, we're not doing anything until I get the barking. Okay? So barking is, we're generating a lot of arousal pursuit. Now the reason I say pursuit is because in the beginning, might not have just been, might be arousal, but then ultimately, of course, we're getting closer and we're trying to get the dog kind of running back and forth on the line, maybe make a miss or two, right? And then running away. And we're generating that arousal and that pursuit. I want the dog wanting me. If he's not tearing up the grass, he doesn't really want me. If he's standing there going woo, 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 he doesn't really want me. So, with puppies and with any new dog I'm starting, that's the MO. Back tie frustration I also included in there. Because whether the handler's holding the dog, or if the handler's a little bit not so strong, you can back tie the dog and have the handler stand there, you're gonna still do the same thing. Where you come out, whoa, 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 you're gonna make some frustration with the bite wedge if he's capable of it. If he's a defensive dog, same thing, you're just gonna run off, okay? And you're gonna reward him by running off. And with the defensive dogs, the goal is to incrementally increase our exposure to them. So, in the beginning, you come out, you run away. And you do that a couple times so he's real comfortable. Then you come out and you do a sideways cut instead of a runaway direct, right? Whoa, 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 right? And now he's like, okay, he's handling you being out there a little bit. And then you run away, of course, and then you come in and you cut in closer and closer. You see how close he's willing to let you get before you see the degrading the performance, where it goes from whoa, 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 whoa. The dog starts going backwards or showing any kind of insecurity. You're knowing that's where I need to work him a little bit to build him up. So you still, of course, will run away. You're not going to overdo it, but your goal is to get as close as you can get ultimately, it's going to take several sessions, right? And build the dog up to the point where he can handle you being in there, right? Not maybe pushing him or touching him, but within 6 feet. That's ultimately what you want, okay? And then running you off. Now, with all this stuff, okay, peekaboo, boogeyman, back tie frustration, you have to remember, keep your windows short. The longer you're out there, as we saw yesterday, more chance of the dog going down in tower and becoming confused and becoming passive, which we really don't want. We want super active dogs. We saw with the more experienced dogs that we brought out, they're very, very active. It's very hard even to hold them when they start going, which is what you want. Those dogs that really are committed to whatever it is that we're trying to do, okay? One more thing that we'll do, I call them field pushes, okay? And with some dogs, remember we talked about with some dogs, they need to push you. We don't always just do the same thing. I come out, you bark, I run away. We sometimes let the dog, like remember that female, we let her go to the blind and push him out of the blind, okay? Sometimes you can do that. So if the dog is showing, that for me usually is one of the last things I do in this stage of training, okay? So, you know, if I had to pick 1, 2, 3, it would be 1, 2, 3, and then 4, okay? So we're gonna start with the peekaboos and the blinds, the boogeymans. Boogeymans are a little different because I don't do them necessarily, and so once the dog's doing good, like peekaboos on the field, sometimes I'll say, all right, let's go over here where he hasn't been before, and you're gonna walk him, and I'm gonna jump out like 40 feet away, and just jump out, and he's gonna be like, whoa, who's that? And then he's gonna react, you know, and even if he goes, whoa, 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 I'm gonna take off, right? And then we'll just do that on and off. And that, boogeymans for me is like the life of the dog. Like, not the life I should say, but like a lot through the development. Like I don't just leave it up there. Like I'll still do them randomly. The way I end them might be different, but I'll still do them randomly here and there because it's a great way to kind of keep the dog on his toes and keep the dog not become situation specific, which is so important. A lot of dogs are like 2 situations, but I can only work on the field, right? We already talked about that. So, boogeymans, back tie frustration, right? That's where you can start getting, if you've got the prey dog, you can start getting closer and really kind of getting them running around and super frustrated on that back tie, tearing up the ground. He wants it, he wants it, he wants it, okay? And then field pushes, right? We'll do some field pushes again today and just kind of talk about them. The field pushes, I want the dog to bark at me, okay? Just like what we were doing there. He's barking, there's no blind now. He's barking at me, or maybe there is a blind, but we're not going right to it. He's barking at me, I crack the whip, or I yell, and I run away from him, and then he drags the handler close to me again, and we do some more barking, and then I crack the whip and I run, right? And as I run, I usually will wiggle the object, whether it's a sleeve or whether it's a wedge, okay? And I'll just generate a lot of arousal and forward behavior towards me, okay? So the defensive dogs really like field pushes if you've developed them properly. But again, you have a short window. Don't have them pushing you all up and down the field. It's just a couple pushes and you're gone, okay? Or a couple pushes, you make a couple misses and you're gone. Now I intentionally didn't mention grips here, because if I do, I know what's gonna happen. People are gonna start, you know, giving tons of bites here. The goal is not tons of bites. Now, here's the thing. With some of these dogs, you're gonna see that they need a bite. It's like, oh, okay, this bark, I'm not getting anywhere. Some of these dogs, you know, they have only so much power before it starts to go down. And if they've gone a few reps and they're not getting a bite and they're becoming bored, you can see it. You can see it. As long as you're making sure it's just not because your reps are too long, right? For some of them, after a few misses, I might just let them have the wedge quickly and leave, right? Or have the wedge quickly and give it a little quick tug and then go, right? And that's how I develop the dog. I don't focus a lot on, oh, how is he biting and all that. I do a lot of that frustration and, oh, you got it, and I'm done, right? I do a lot of that, and that really kind of, again, it creates a ton of arousal and frustration in the dog. This is basically your power. This, step one, is all about generating power, whether it's a puppy or an adult, and keeping your sessions really short. Don't get into 20-minute deals with these guys. It's too long, all right? So, step two, grip possession, okay? This is important. Now, once you've got the power, we've got to put it somewhere, and that's generally where we're getting into the grip and the possession, okay? So for us, grip possession, you can do it on the back tie, obviously. Dogs on a back tie or dogs on the handler. You're gonna go in there, you're gonna make the arousal like you made earlier, but it should come very fast because you've already set that in place, all right? And now you're gonna come in and you're gonna make your misses and get the dog's feet moving from side to side so that the dog's really showing a strong pursuit, and then you're gonna offer him a grip, okay? In the beginning, I always start with the leather just to see kind of what I'm working with. If I can get that leather out of his or her mouth, then we know that we gotta stay there a little bit, work on that grip, using negative punishment, right? Oh, I got it out of your mouth, oh, too bad. Frustration, giving the dog regrips, so on and so forth, okay? Whether you give the dog, now here I always say, you can't do too many bites, but you can't do too few, okay? For some dogs, one bite is the max. I give him one bite, he loses it, I take him out frustrated. For some dogs, I need to give him a few bites to build confidence, and so that he understands what it is that we're doing, especially if I see him getting stronger and stronger with each grip. Now, if over several sessions I have to give him 3 bites, then we gotta change something up, right? We're looking for a dog that when he gets that grip, he commits and he's doing whatever it is that you want him to do. So if you want him to pull, you're making the pull. If you want him to push, he's making that push. Obviously, that's gonna happen over a number of sessions. Pushing is really easy. You're basically just gonna set, come in, he's gonna counter in, you're gonna react, jump away, right? Pulling, depending on the dog, can be a little bit more challenging, actually. If the dog wants to naturally pull, great. You're just gonna give it to him when he offers the correct behavior. You're not gonna reward the wrong behavior. So if you're teaching a dog to counter, and he's pulling, which a lot of them will do, you wait. You pull him out to the end of the back tie, create that opposition reflex, come in, counter, oh, there it is, and you're gone, okay? So, this is where you're gonna start to work on the grips. You're gonna show him how you want him to grip. You're gonna develop the commitment. The most important thing is the commitment in the grip. Dog that bites 110% and stays there for as long as he can. You can do this on the back tie. If you have a box or a table, I like to do this a lot on the box and the table, not only for my back, but also because everything's like, I find that the box, like, so if you have a really high prey dog, a lot of prey, you can put them in there and make a lot of good work in there. And if you have a dog that maybe is a little bit slower, I like to put them up there and get them moving a bit more, right? So for me, slow dogs go on the half a table. Especially also if I'm doing IGP work, I like to use that a little bit more just because it gives me more flexibility to have the dog moving around. I can do better barking and stuff like that. And then if I have a really high prey, like hectic dog, he goes in that box and I can work the grips there. All right? So we're developing grips, possession, and just promoting that behavior there. And again, we'll get into that more today. We'll do some box work and stuff. And then skills and stress. So let's say now you've got all the arousal you want. You got all the grip and the possession you want. So you got basically my German Shepherd that I brought out, right? Like he wants to do it. He's there. He's committed. He's all about it. Now it's time for skills and stress. Okay? So skills are, now you're adding outs, secondary obedience. You're adding, if there's a technical stuff that you're doing for your sport or whatever it is that you're doing with the dogs, this is where you're starting to add it. So for me with the protection dogs, this is where now I'm starting to add the barking next to the handler. I'm putting rules around the work, right? And this is also where you add the stress within the dog's ability, right? So that if you're going to be doing a lot of can curtains and clatter sticks and all that type of stuff, this is where you're going to really start to show the dog a little more heat and generate resistance to that and show the dog how to deal with the stress, okay? And there's ways to do that. We're going to get into that, all right? So this is basically our step-by-step development. The most important thing, arousal, pursuit, power. I want that. The next step, grips, possession, commitment. I want that. Then after that, we get into all the nitty gritty and special stuff. Okay? But if we don't have arousal, pursuit, and grips and possession, can't do it. Okay? And you'll get dogs that maybe already have skills and stress and stuff. They've got experience. He's been doing it 4 years. And you're like, man, he's got a grip issue, or he's got maybe a bit of a commitment issue. Well, there's little things that you can do within those specific categories to fix it, right? Like I've had dogs come in with like some pretty like bad grip issues, right? So usually the solution for that, like I said, would be negative punishment, right? Where you go back a little bit to the leather, work on the dog with the leather bite pillow, really show him, hey man, don't screw around with those, you're gonna lose it, okay? Or you've got a dog that might type right side to side, okay? We talked a little bit about how to deal with that yesterday, whether it's choke offs, using guards, doing outs in a specific area. It's like, oh, you want to chew over here, there's the out over there, stuff like this. If you've got speed issues, there's certain things you can do to generate a little more speed, so on and so forth. Okay? So, what we're going to do today is we're going to start with, before we pull some dogs out, we're going to start with some dry runs. Okay? And just get you guys in the right moving mindset. We're going to start again at the top. We're going to focus on arousal and pursuit.